I could get your attention up here. I have a mic with me today for our video that we're going to be recording, so just bear with me. It's not on. We don't have an audio. This is just for our recording, so you can just ignore the fact that I'm holding a microphone. For those of you guys that don't know me, my name is Marissa Blackburn, and I'm the Environmental Education Manager here at the Cape Fear River Watch. We really appreciate you guys bearing the cold weather this morning to come out and join us for our February 1st Saturday seminar. Hopefully you got pancakes and some coffee. If not, there's plenty still left back there. You can grab some more. I am going to share a couple reminders, and then I will pass over our presentation to our speaker. So we have next Saturday, our second Saturday cleanup. Our location is going to be on Front Street near New Anthem Brewery and Front Street Apartments. We're going to be cleaning up that area. If you're available and interested, please join us. We'll be starting at 9 a.m. We also have a event that we're helping to promote, a wilderness first aid training. If you or anyone you know is interested in getting first aid trained to be able to deal with emergencies outside, there is a training happening in March in the Wilmington area. So I'm going to be passing around some flyers with my sign-in sheet. If you're interested, you can grab a flyer and pass along. I am going to be passing around our sign-in sheet. If you didn't sign in on that front table, if you could just please write your name down. If you're already emailed, subscribed, you don't need to put your email down. If you're not and you would like to be, you can write down your email for us. We are accepting donations, like as always, for our first Saturday seminars. There are some jars up front if you are interested. And I also wanted to shout out, thank you to TK for filming today. And also, if our board president, Paul Smith, could just raise your hand. He's here. I just wanted to point that out there in the back. Thank you for being here this morning. And one last event. Later this month in February, on February 21st, which is a Tuesday, at 10 a.m., we're going to have a walking eco tour out at Greenfield Lake. So we're going to be starting our spring series. Each month we'll have one walking 1 hour guided eco tour out at Greenfield Lake. So join us for that. And it will be a great opportunity to spot birds and look for birds and other wildlife when we're there. So our speaker today is John Carpenter, who has worked as a wildlife biologist with the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission for the past 13 years. He received a Master of Science in Plant and Soil Science from Alabama Agricultural and Mechanical University and a Bachelor of Arts in Environmental Studies from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. He is involved with the NC Bird Atlas as a member of the steering committee and both the science and outreach subcommittees. We also have Christine Stoughton-Root here as well today in the front, if you want to raise your hand. And she is the Region 2 coordinator, which spans 13 counties in southeastern North Carolina for the North Carolina Bird Atlas, including New Hanover County all the way up to Beaufort. And she'll be here afterwards to talk more about the Bird Atlas and to help anybody get signed up and go over how to record lists if you are interested in hanging out a little bit and learning more from her. So she'll be a great resource for you. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it on over to John.
All right, good morning, everyone. Well, first I want to thank Cape Fear River Watch for inviting me to come and talk here today. We tried to make it happen last fall, I think, but couldn't make it happen, so I'm glad that she reminded me and invited me to come again. I also want to thank Christine. She traveled from Oriental, right? Oh, yeah. So I really appreciate her coming all the way down here. And then lastly, thank all of you for coming here. I know it would have been easy to stay in your warm beds this cold morning, so I appreciate you getting out. Let's see. So I did want to make one more quick announcement that was shared with me yesterday from the Cape Fear Audubon Society. They've got some events coming up on March 14th at Halliburton. And then we've got a couple of walks on March 11th and March 18th that are associated with them and also the Atlas. So just go to their website if you want to get some more details. I don't have anything more specific to share about that at this time. But just out of curiosity, how many people here identify as birders? Do we have any birders here? Okay, got a few. Casually, okay. For our non-birders, can anybody name what this red bird is here? What is the cardinal? Yeah, state bird. How about the one in the middle? Bald eagle. And all right. So it sounds to me like everybody here is a birder. All right. So One key thing I want to make here to start off with is that I think a real barrier to people sort of getting into a project like the Atlas is they feel like I have to know every single bird I see or hear or encounter, and that's not true. Okay, so we want this project to be inclusive. We want beginners and more advanced birders, people who have been doing it for a while. So please don't let that stop you from participating. So my goals here for today are to kind of give a brief overview of what the NC Bird Atlas is, NCBA, our objectives and the current status, and to discuss some ways for you to participate, including submitting, sharing your data through your bird observations through eBird. So some of these slides were taken from a virtual presentation I gave, and I included these QR codes so that people could scan them while they were watching on their screen. So it's a little difficult to do that here today, but I did. Does anybody need one of these sheets? I'm just going to hand these out if anybody didn't get one. You got one? No? Good. Here we go. So this might be an easy way for you to follow along. I kind of ran out here, so just share with a neighbor. So those will be some quick steps just to help get you set up on eBird, but I'll go through that here too. And Christine can help after the talk, or both of us can help after the talk. So the first question is, what is an atlas? And an atlas is a large-scale, standardized biological survey that mobilizes volunteers and trained professionals to systematically cover vast areas over a period of about 5 years. Now, our project is a bird atlas, obviously, but atlases, there's been all sorts of atlases for wildlife, plants, and animals. But the real backbone for me of an atlas project is these elements here that are underlined. So it's large scale, it's standardized, so people are collecting data in a pretty uniform way across a really large area. Excuse me. And birds as a tax have had it pretty good for a while. Like lots of people like birds. They're easily recognizable. They could be, they have songs that make it, usually easier to identify them and detect them. So a lot of interest has been given to birds. A lot of research and surveys have been done, but a lot of these studies are done in maybe just studying one or two species or in a very small area study site. So the atlas is trying to, we're trying to cover the whole state. We're trying to collect a lot of data that can be used over a large scale, but it's also can be used for fine scale analyses too. So that's one really important reason why we're wanting to do an atlas, which now leads to the question, why would we want to do one, right? So better data, right? This can help us with making decisions on conservation issues. It can help us with long-term monitoring of populations. And it could also lead to, it could lead to more novel research to help us better understand what's happening with our bird species in North Carolina. So a study that came out a few years ago using some data collected by the U.S. Geological Survey's Breeding Birds Survey, which is a continent-wide survey effort, found that since 1970 we've lost almost 3 billion birds. So that's alarming, right? That's something that we want to better understand and try and reverse. And one issue, as someone who works for the Wildlife Resources Commission, who helped develop our state wildlife action plan, is that we currently lack rough population estimates for more than half of the 281 species that we track in that plan. So that's a pretty good indication that we do need better data. We need more data to be able to come up with more robust estimates for these species. Next, why we need a bird atlas. So we're blessed with a lot of species diversity here. We've got over 470 bird species that occur across our state at some point during the year. Lots of habitats for these birds to live in. But as an agency, I'm the land bird biologist for Eastern North Carolina. There's just too many places for me to go to, and honestly too many birds for me to be studying by myself. So the Atlas project sort of brings a lot of volunteers into it, a lot of other people to help us count these birds and study them. And it can increase awareness. So this is an excellent opportunity to engage the local community in conservation and nature appreciation. So kind of what I'm hopefully doing here today. So we're bringing people in from all skill levels to appreciate birds and help contribute to this project. A somewhat still compelling, but maybe less so reason is that North Carolina is the only state east of the Mississippi to not have completed a bird atlas. So we've got a couple of states here. We've got New York and Maryland, D.C. are now on their third atlas. Several other states have done two, most one, but yeah, North Carolina has not yet completed one. We did attempt one back in the late 80s, but we were not able to finish that. So definitely not trying to follow in the same footsteps there. But back in the late 80s and 90s, it was a much different time for collecting and organizing such a huge project. So one distinction here is most states have what's called a breeding bird atlas, so they focus on birds that are breeding, and most breeding for birds occurs in the summertime. But we call our project, so we don't call our project the North Carolina Breeding Bird Atlas, we call it the North Carolina Bird Atlas. And we did that because we also wanted to incorporate an element of the winter season. Lots of birds migrate down to North Carolina during the winter, and so we wanted to understand what was going on there. But winter atlases are much less common. Oklahoma is the only state to have finished and published the results from a winter atlas. Ohio and Louisiana did one a long time ago, and I haven't seen any results of that, so I'm not sure what happened there. And then Connecticut finished their bird atlas, which included a winter component, a year or two ago, and Maine is now just finishing their, they completed their summer portion of their atlas, and now they're completing their winter portion. So many fewer states are attempting this winter thing, but we felt it was important, again, just because we do have a lot of species of concern that winter in our state. So our objectives for our Atlas project are to generate this baseline data and relative abundance. And by baseline, I mean sort of establishing a number that we can then compare in the future. Lots of states, a big idea or point behind an atlas is to then do one 10, 20 years in the future so that you can see, hey, have populations, have they increased or decreased? Has the distribution of birds expanded or contracted? So this kind of being our first atlas, we're just trying to collect that baseline data to then, not only help us in the near term, but also for long-term analyses and planning. And we're doing this for all wild birds in the state. So it's, songbirds, game birds, we're not discriminating against any species of bird. And again, just underscoring, this is data collected by volunteers. This is very much a citizen science project. And we're also hiring some technicians to go out as well. And if anybody has any questions at any point, I'm happy to answer them right now. Okay. Yeah.
What prevented you from doing the bird atlas? You said it had been attempted but you couldn't complete it. Or what happened?
Right. So that was back in the 80s. That was long before I was with the commissioner or involved in it. Yeah. I don't know what I was doing in the late 80s. I think, again, it was just, so we're using this program called eBird, which I'll get into, and you can submit your data online. There was, the internet was not a thing back then. So they'd have to mail out these paper cards to people who were interested in participating, and they would fill out the card and then mail it back to somebody. I think just the logistics of that were just such a challenge. And then you just even communicating, too. There was no email. So I think they ran into some barriers with that, and then funding, too. I think at that time in the 80s, that's when that map of all those, that's when a lot of states were starting their first atlases. So there was probably some competition and just sort of momentum. Everybody's got to do an atlas, right? And, but I think for North Carolina, unfortunately, just some of the organization wasn't quite put in place the way it needed to be. Yeah.
So we haven't done one, but are we in the process of doing a 5-year study
Yep.
right now? How
Yep.
far along are we?
We launched in 2021. So we're about halfway, and I'll show some preliminary results we've got right now of our progress so far. Yeah. All right. And just if you've got a question, just yell it out, raise your hand, throw a pancake up here. I don't know. Just you can get however you need to get my attention. So yeah, so data, of course, that's a real big part of this project. We want to increase public participation. We want to get people interested in not just birds, but just conservation in general, and to try and build partnerships to achieve these goals. So we've we're working with universities and other nonprofits, maybe hopefully Cape Fear River Watch, to just sort of not only just help the atlas, but hopefully help them with their missions too. So next you might be wondering, how do you atlas? How do you collect all this data and over such a large area? So we can't survey everywhere. The state's just too big. So what we did and what other states do is that we divide the state up into these what we call priority blocks. So this helps just make it a more manageable amount of place to survey. It's still a lot. We have 937 of these blocks. But the idea is just to get, again, that systematic, uniform coverage across the state, which just makes interpreting the data and analyzing the data that much better, and it makes the results that much stronger when you have effort across the whole state. And we selected the southeast, so within, so let me back up here. So there are 937 quads, and each quad has 6 blocks in them. So we selected the southeast block as our priority block. So we've got 937 of these priority blocks. We chose the southeast because Virginia, to the north of us, had just completed their second bird atlas just before we started, and they used that block as their priority block. So we want to maintain some continuity because we also are working and collaborating with other state atlases to make this a data set that's not for North Carolina, but could be regional and continental in scope. People can adopt these blocks. Our volunteers can adopt these blocks, and so I'll get into that here in a moment. So our goal is to have what we call a primary atlaser for every block. So somebody who adopts this block, they try and ensure that the block meets the requirements that we have to be considered complete. And once a block is complete, then hopefully they'll adopt another block or two and continue to keep surveying so we can complete all 937 of those. But you don't have to, anybody can bird in any block, and you can bird anywhere. And that's another important thing to make. You don't have to go to a priority block. We encourage those, we emphasize those, again, to get that more complete coverage. But anywhere you see a wild bird in the state, we want and need that data. And just because somebody adopts a block or is a primary atlas for that block, they can't sort of kick people out or bully them around. So we're encouraging data collection, nearly year-round. We kind of tell people you can kind of take the fall off to not have to be worried about putting observations into eBird or following some of our protocols. So the emphasis is in the spring and summer and winter time. To complete a block, we're asking for 20 hours of effort or survey time, and there's that approximate, and then about 5 to 10 hours in the winter time. We want you to try and visit all the habitats that are in a block, and emphasis on accessible. We don't want anybody trespassing or putting themselves into a dangerous situation. So try and get to all the habitats that they can. And we want to try and confirm breeding. So that's a big part of this project also. We are trying to identify breeding behaviors in birds, right? So why, you might be wondering, why do we want to know what birds are doing? Can't we just see them and count them? But with things like climate change, birds may be starting to nest earlier or even start nesting longer. So as we document these behaviors, we can try and start tying it to those changes in the environment as well, which will be really important for managing these species. So the status of our bird atlas, we launched it in March of 2021. It is a 5-year effort, so we're planning on hopefully being done by March of 2026. As of now, we have over 1,700 atlasers, so these are people who are submitting and sharing their checklists to our eBird portal. And I'll describe what I mean by portal in a little bit. They've submitted over 100,000 complete survey checklists, and we've confirmed breeding for 202 species. So this is our block map. This is where this is on our website. You can go here. If you want to adopt a block, you can click on one of these squares and a little window will pop up and you can adopt it. The red ones are blocks that have been adopted. And you can see still a lot of blue ones, so a lot of people have not adopted a lot of blocks, but we kind of anticipate that. Some of these areas are really far from where people live, but we're slowly chipping away at it. And this is on our eBird website. You can go to ncbirdatlas.org to get here. So this is This is from February of 2022, so this is about almost 1 year after we launched. So the yellow shading is 0 to 5 hours of effort, so less effort there, and then the darker it gets, the more effort there is. It's maybe a little challenging to see with the base map here, but similar to the block adoption map, most of the birding effort is going on near the major areas of where people live. Again, kind of to be expected. But we did make a lot of progress this last year, and you can see we start filling in a lot of these gaps here and trying to really, complete that map. Yeah.
So by hours, you mean you mean aggregate? You mean for all of the people involved?
Correct. Yeah.
Not just one individual.
Yep. Yeah. So if you bird in a block for an hour, and Christine and this gentleman next to you, that would be three hours total worth of birding for that block. Yeah. So yeah, we're making a lot of progress. A lot of this is due to volunteers getting out and dedicating their time to contribute. We are, as I said, we're also hiring some people and sending them out to some places that are far too remote and difficult to get to. So I think we're on the right path here. We still got a couple years to go. Hopefully, going to turn most of this map this sort of darker blue shade. Yeah.
So for some of the, let's say, places that are more remote but closer to where we are right now, you have to adopt that specific block to bird in there, or can you just, visit and do analysis?
Yeah, you do not have to adopt it. The idea behind adopting is to encourage someone to kind of stick with it, to ensure that somebody will be there to make sure that block meets those requirements. And a lot of times that the person who adopts it goes out and does all the surveying themselves, but sometimes it's just reaching out to some of their birding friends or people who are also surveying there and trying to keep them a little more organized. So it's a little bit more effort on their part, but you can go anywhere at any time. And
If you want to do a day trip to someplace more remote, that's useful for the information.
absolutely, yep,
Okay.
yep. So how can you contribute to this? So we've got three main ways. The first is sharing your bird observations with the atlas through eBird. If you own property, and again, we're for this we probably are emphasizing in the priority blocks, trying to get access to some property. A lot of times, we and our volunteers are limited to just surveying from the roadside, which can be productive, but it's also some safety concerns, and a lot of times, more unique habitats are far from roads. So if you know of anybody that has property inside these priority blocks that wouldn't mind a birder coming and counting birds, that would be really helpful. And then just spreading the word. Maybe you're not into birding or you don't know anybody with property. If you just take some of my pamphlets and stickers and hand them out to people who you think may be into that'd be very helpful too. So submitting your bird observation. So I'm going to kind of step everybody through using eBird, and this is pretty high level. We can get into much more detail later, but this is just a quick guide to how to get involved. Those handouts out there will also help step you through it with those QR codes. So the first thing you need to do is create an account with eBird. So you can go to ncbirdatlas.org or scan the QR code on the sheets I handed out, or come talk to Christine and I after this. It's you know, it's another, you got to create another username and password, but it's, I don't think anybody's going to hack this site and get anything too valuable from you. So when, okay, yeah. So when you scan that QR code to go to our website, it'll bring you to this screen, and then you'll, I think, probably hit the menu and just go to create account, or maybe you'll end up on this screen to try and sign in, just create account, and then it's just first name, last name, a username, password, and email, and then that's it, and then you're into eBird. So it is very, very easy to do. The next thing is we really encourage people to use their app, because you can collect data in the field and you could submit it right then and there, and it goes right to the website. It's instantaneous. I mean, there's a little bit of a lag, but it's very quick. You can also, you know, if you don't want to have a phone, I know sometimes it can be distracting. You just want to be in nature without dealing with that technology. I mean, you can write down your observations and submit them through the browser later on, but we do, you know, for now we're going to emphasize the app just because it's the easiest. Yes?
Will your app identify birds for you, or will you have to know what those birds are?
Kind of. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. There are some tools that are emerging that do help with that a lot. So, but yeah, if you just, in a few minutes, I'll get to that. So they have, you know, app for iPhone and Android. So this idea, I mentioned a portal before. So eBird is a worldwide database. So people all over the world use it to collect, to submit their observations and keep track of things that they've seen. And you have this thing called a life list. So you have this running number of all the species you've seen. The NC Bird Atlas portal is just, it's a filter. So it's a quicker and easier way for eBird to pull all of the data that people are submitting to our portal and put it in its own little corner of eBird. And then that map I showed you of all the effort, it goes in and feeds that map. So it's very useful for us from a data management standpoint to have people be putting their observations into the portal. By submitting data to the portal, I mean, there's an expectation that you have some idea, some awareness or concept of what the atlas is and some of the requirements that we ask people to consider when they're surveying, and I'll get into that in a little bit. All your observations still live in eBird, so if anybody here currently uses eBird, it's not splitting them up to where you have to find your data in two different places. Everything just lives in eBird, so don't worry about losing any data by submitting it to our portal. And then lastly, but certainly not leastly, is this effort can help us pay for the atlas. So any hour you spend in the field surveying for us equals $19 that we can use as match for our federal grant to help pay for this. So the state is on the hook for 25% of paying for this project. And if we can get volunteers to help match that 25%, we can use our state dollars to pay for studies of herpetofauna, so snakes and reptiles their populations are just tanking. We can't use a lot of federal money for that, so we can use our state money instead to divert that to some other projects. So those are the reasons why we encourage people to use our portal. And to change the portal, when you download the app, when the first time you open it up, it'll bring you to this screen here. Or actually, the app does update and change. There might be one step before this to start a checklist, but all you have to do is go down to this tab that says More. This is for an iPhone. Settings and Account. Here's Portal. So by default, it'll be set just to the core eBird. And all you got to do is just scroll down and just select North Carolina Bird Atlas. And you don't have to do that every time. Once you do it once, it's set, and that's that. If you leave the state or the country, ideally you would go back and change it to either core eBird or maybe one of these other. If you're going to New York's doing a bird atlas. Maybe you go to New York and contribute data to their portal. But it's not necessary. We can filter out that data. If somebody goes to West Virginia, we can we have the spatial data that we can be like, that's not obviously North Carolina. We're not going to use it. So don't worry too much about that. But if you're on top of it and organized, then yeah, you can switch it back and forth. And I use West Virginia's example because I was up there recently and was birding and didn't change my portal. So, and then for Android, click on this button up here, Settings, Portal, and select the atlas. So those 4 steps, and then you're good. Hopefully you don't ever delete eBird, but if you do, you'd have to go back in and change it at that point, these settings. So there are what I consider 3 types of surveys you can do when you're birding with eBird and for the atlas. And these are categorized as a complete checklist or survey or an incomplete survey. And for both of these, you can either be stationary, just standing in one spot observing things, or you could be you can go walk around. So you can be stationary or traveling, and then there's incidental, which is always just going to be a stationary sort of survey. I know I'm going through a lot of stuff, and Christine made a good point that to remind you all we're available for help at any time to go over a lot of these concepts. So feel free. I got business cards here, and you can find us on the website. So a complete checklist. What distinguishes this from the others is that birding is your primary purpose. So you're out, you want to be birding, you're paying attention to all the things you're seeing and hearing. That's your focus for that amount of time, however long you're spending. And you're making effort to identify and record all the things that you can identify. I know some people, if you're a beginner, there's gonna be lots of things that you have no idea. You see some bird a quarter mile away flying, you don't know what that is. And that's fine. If you can't identify it, you can't identify it. But the point here is that you're not, if you're gonna call it a complete checklist, if you just see a Canada goose there, if you're just whatever, it's just a goose, no one cares about that. If you just ignore that, then that's not being a complete checklist. So you need to be recording everything that you can identify. Whereas an incomplete or incidental checklist is birding is not your primary focus. So maybe you're walking your dog or in the garden or just taking the trash out and you just see a bird and you're like, oh, I've never seen that bird here. That's cool and I can identify it. You can get your phone out and submit that data to the checklist or to the portal, to the bird atlas, and then just go on your way. So when you're out birding for the atlas, we've got what I consider to be 3 simple rules to remember. The first is that we ask people to try and keep it to less than an hour, and we ask people to keep it less than an hour because the longer you spend somewhere counting birds, birds are very mobile. They could be moving in and out. You might end up counting the same individual more than once, and then that sort of inflates our estimates or abundance of those birds. So by just having a slightly shorter window of time, you're just less likely to do that. More importantly, we'd say if you are traveling, if you're going for a walk, to try and keep that distance under a mile. And the reason for that, though, is if we see some checklists where people they'll have a 10-mile transect. So they're probably driving some of that. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're walking. But we don't know where you observed those species along that 10-mile stretch. It could be at the very beginning or the very end. And as we're trying to use this data to make associations of species with the habitats that they need, it makes it that much more difficult if we don't know where those species were occurring. So by keeping it to less than a mile, or obviously if you're doing a stationary count, you don't have to worry about distance, we could just tie those checklists to much more specific habitats. And then lastly, just to use a precise location. And I'll get into how to do that in an example of submitting a checklist here shortly. So let's use the incidental checklist as an example, because this is, for a lot of beginners, this is probably, I think, the best way to introduce sort of e-birding or an atlasing to a beginner, because a lot of times the beginners just aren't going to know that many species, but there are some, like you all demonstrated in the very beginning, there are some species that you do know, so maybe you can at least contribute that knowledge and experience to the atlas. So let's say you're over at Greenfield Lake and you see this bird perched in a tree. What bird is that again? It's got a, what's the head? It's got a white head, yeah, so that's a bald eagle. So incident detectors, again, so this is great for people who are outside but just distracted. And you can use it, doesn't have to be a single bird, you can use it for many species. So let's say you see that eagle perch, so you open up your app, it's gonna automatically put the time in. If you're new to using eBird, I always just click this record track, so that it'll record your path that you're walking if you do walk. And then click Start Checklist. Up here, you can click anywhere up here and it'll bring up a map and it'll show you where you are. There's a little dot there of your location. You can see these lines here. These are the blocks. If it's a priority block, it'll be shaded, I think, orange. This screenshot's a little old before they implemented that, so that'll help you figure out where you are if you're inside of one of those priority blocks or not. Again, you don't have to be inside a priority block.
If you want to identify priority blocks near you, how do you do that? Like if you want to
They all are? I'm sorry.
if you want to go observe in a priority block, how do you identify the priority blocks ahead of time?
So if you go to, maybe can I hop on the internet at the end of this? Yeah. Not right now. I'll get on the internet after, and I can show on the screen of a way to go and explore blocks, and especially for like trying to plan a trip. Yeah. I mean, this does show you the block, but it doesn't really help you with trying to plan. But on our website, there is a map where you can has some resources and a map to help you do that. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got a question just because the 20 hours in summer and 5 to 10 hours in winter, is that if you are adopting or whatever, or is that if you're helping in any way, shape, or form?
So that's collective. Yeah. So if
So anybody who does this needs to do that minimum, is that what you're saying?
No. If you decide, hey, I want to go out and go look at birds and submit some observations to the portal, and you go into a priority block and you spend an hour there, that goes towards that goal of reaching that hour, the 20 hours. But you don't have to be the primary atlaser or adopted to do that. If there is somebody who did adopt that block, I'm sure they would appreciate the extra help. And so, but it's this is very inclusive. We're trying to build a community around, hopefully people helping each other and maybe going out and birding together. So. So that's the map. If you click up there, and then within the screen, the app will produce a list of all the species that you're likely to encounter around your location. So probably based on other data people had submitted. But you can just start typing in the name of the bird here, and it'll filter it out and give you just that one choice, so bald eagle. And then there's a little plus button there. You can just press that, and it'll change it to 1. And then down here, if that's all you want to do, and I saw that eagle and I'm going to keep going, that's perfectly fine. Just click stop, and it'll ask you, are you sure you want to stop your survey? You can just click stop track. It'll bring you to this screen. Again, it's got the date and the time. You have to choose your location. So this is what I was saying, we want to use a precise location as possible. If it's just a stationary checklist, the app will grab the coordinates from you, and it'll show up here as a little marker, and you just click on that marker, and it'll populate this field for you. If you've been to that place before, you'll see here, this is my house, so I've got other checklist spots that I've used before. I can select that as well. And then it'll bring, once you do that, so it put the coordinates in here and the location. Here's where you'd select the type of survey, so complete, incomplete, or incidental. So the app's smart enough to know that it's going to guess that it's incidental because you're reporting one, it's stationary, you haven't moved, and you're submitting one species, so it assumes it's incidental, so that would just be the default. If you're by yourself, just one. If there's more than one of you there, you can change that, the number of observers. There's no distance or time associated with an incidental, so those will be grayed out. This is asking if it's, well, maybe I misspoke. So this would not be, so it would be incidental, it would be stationary, traveling, or incidental up here. And then this is asking if it's complete or incomplete. And then this, if you want to add any comments in here, you can do that. And then this is just a summary of what you saw, and just click submit. And then down here at the bottom, if you click on this tab here, this lists all the checklists you've submitted. And if you haven't gone through and clicked submit, if you back out of the survey, then there's this tab here to where things would list the things you have not submitted.
Got a hand up right here.
Oh yeah.
Okay, let's say you see more than one of the same species. Would you just identify one of species, or would you be identifying 5 of the same one?
So this aggregate to the species. So yeah. So I'll show you here. So let's say you hang around that spot a little bit longer, and all of a sudden you look over and you see, whoa, this big stick nest in the tree. So you get your binoculars out, and now you see that there's 2 eagles, and there's a nest there. So what you could do is you could open up the app, again, go to that submitted checklist. It opens up, you go ahead and click edit. Here's this checklist here, there's 1 species reported. You would click on that, and you would just change that from a 1 to a 2. So now you've got 2 eagles.
Got another hand right here.
Yeah.
I was just gonna, it's a little bit more of a personal question, but I guess, because when I do my e-bird, I always write notes like on the little description, like behavior, or if I find a nest. Did that apply to this or no?
Yes, yeah,
So I
definitely.
can still do that.
Yes, yeah. But rather than, you could still put details in here for sure. That's always good to have. But there are these codes here, breeding and behavior codes. And so for this one, since you found a nest, and let's say you stood there and watched the bird, the female kind of went into the nest and got into kind of a comfy position. This was make the assumption that she's on an active nest, she's incubating eggs. You can click on this list, and again, this screenshot's a little old. They have these color-coded icons to choose from now, but you would choose occupied nest. And so now the survey has gone from us just knowing that there was an eagle at Greenfield Lake, and now it's been enhanced significantly to say, like, not only was there an eagle there, but there were 2, and there's an occupied nest there. So now we have so much more information to work with based on this checklist. And that's it. And I know as I'm going through this now, I'm like, I was probably just like tuning me out. Like, this is way too many steps, but, and I understand that, and yeah.
So if you went on the website and say you went to West Virginia and we were looking for a bald eagle nest, would it tell you where there are bald eagle nests on that website? So maybe you can go and bird watch some eagles?
If you went to West Virginia, yeah. So eBird, if you go to eBird is a way to find where birds are. Yeah, it's
where birds live specifically?
Yeah, I mean, checklists can lead you to a very specific location of where somebody saw something.
Okay.
But if you want to find, but the North Carolina Bird Atlas and the portal won't help you find stuff outside of North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So in North Carolina there are bald eagles, and perhaps we could put in, can we find bald eagles through the app in North Carolina?
Yeah. I could show you on the browser of how to sort of look up where things have been submitted and where things have been seen. Yeah.
That'll be under the explore mode.
Explore.
Explore, and you can enter species, you can enter a bird, you can enter a city, a state, anything, and it'll tell you where they were most likely last seen or the last check list. There's also hot spots that you can refer to in your eBird.
Okay. And then if you follow through there, the eagle or whatever, you might see that they had seen a nest.
Yeah, you could. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a possibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
If the person noticed it.
Right.
Made notification of it. That's why it's so important. If you see one, like you were saying, you see one, you go and use that breeding code. That really pinpoints it.
I think it's numbers on the website, like
Mhm.
1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Yeah, and if I can get on the internet after this, I'll close out of the presentation. We can go through the website and I could show you all some more stuff. Yes, sir.
Yeah, 2 questions. So yesterday I was out and saw a flock of, must have been several hundred, I guess they were starlings. What does one do in that case? And also, you didn't say what to do if you don't know what the bird is.
Okay. I've got a slide about identifying birds and I think what to do with that here shortly. But are you asking about starlings because they're not native to here, or okay?
What do you do if there's several hundred of them?
Yeah. So counting large flocks of birds is a challenge, and eBird has some resources on how to practice in that, and they have some recommendations. I was up at Pungo Lake recently and seeing thousands of snow geese and even more red-winged blackbirds. I mean, it was unreal, just the flocks moving through there, and I wish there was an option just to put like a ton, not even trying to put a number to it. And that comes with practice, I think, a lot too, just, being out there in those situations and just getting better at it. I know they recommend, like, if you estimate 200 starlings and then you see one other one, you don't say 201, because that throws off the concept behind how you got to that 200 to begin with, because that is, I assume you didn't sort of count each one of those, but
I've got the Merlin app, and sometimes in my backyard I'll see like 17 different types of birds.
Mhm.
But you actually want us to visualize them as opposed to, I'm just using the voice or
Yeah.
the sound activation to show all those birds. I don't see them all.
Yeah. So Merlin, so Merlin, I'll just talk about it now. So Merlin is a relatively new app. It's produced by Cornell Lab of Ornithology, who manage eBird, and it's developed pretty rapidly to where you can, if you take a picture of a bird, you can put it in there and it'll help you identify it. You can there's use your microphone in your phone to record or listen to the bird songs you're hearing, and call notes of birds, and it'll tell you what it thinks it is. Now, it's a great tool to start with to help you maybe narrow down an identification, but we don't encourage people to just look at that list and be like, all right, this is everything, because it makes mistakes. It's a machine learning algorithm. It's just prone to making some mistakes. So Merlin is a great tool to start with helping you narrow down identification. But if it's listing a species that you're not familiar with at all, I recommend trying to see it, to find that. If you're hearing it singing, try to get yourself as close to you as you can, and then, maybe use your binoculars to actually get a visual confirmation.
Oh yeah, one last question from me. You said that in the autumn, don't do this because that's the point, you're not taking data, so cut it off between.
You could still, we'll take data year round, but we're trying to give people a little bit of a break, and so when we first started discussing this project, we did want to be a year-round atlas to capture birds that are breeding here, wintering here, and then birds that are migrating in the spring and fall. But we felt like that may be too difficult to coordinate, and so we said we'll just stick with the winter and the spring, summer. But yeah, you could still submit data anytime. If you want it, I won't stop you. Okay. I think I'm getting close to the end here. So I talked about access to private property. I think earlier, if you know somebody that's got property in a priority block that you think would be okay with a volunteer or a commission employee coming out and counting birds, please let me know. I've got I didn't hand these out, but these are these forms here that would get that person's information, and they could just drop this in the mail to us. Or they can just give me a call or email me too. So again, anyone can contribute. This is not for really experienced birders. You know, this is a project that is for listers, people who are really experienced and really diehards, who drive hundreds, thousands of miles to go find one bird. People who just sit in their backyard and watch birds. Hunters, you know, people who just enjoy wildlife and being outside. So we are giving talks and hosting webinars. We're starting to lead some more bird walks now too. And we have an event calendar on our website. We're trying to keep that updated with these events. I've got one coming up. It's in Elizabethtown on February 19th for the Year of the Trail. This is a initiative that State Parks and Department of Cultural and Natural Resources is initiating this year to get people outside.
What did you say you have a bird walk there?
February 19th.
In Elizabeth, how do we have to?
You have to register. Yeah, I went on their website yesterday, and he still hasn't posted the registration link for it. So, yeah, I'm not. I don't know. I'm not sure what to say.
Like 3 hours away?
It's about an hour. Yeah. Yeah. Elizabeth's a little bit farther away. And I got tons of stickers. So if you just want to grab, if somebody wants to take the rest of these and just hand them out to anybody. I forgot to bring pencils.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if you're one of those people that is like, when I'm outdoors, it's time for me to leave my phone behind.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe as a camera. Yeah, or you're in a place that doesn't have cell service. Is there like a form for hand observation? You know, it's like to remember all of those different
Mm-hmm.
channels. Is there like a written form you can print out from the internet or something to help with handwritten observations?
I think we did produce one, and we were kind of kicking it around, trying to fine tune it and make some adjustments. And we didn't quite get there yet, but I'm hearing more people asking for something like that. So I think we need to do a better job of getting that out. But yeah, it would be a way to be able to leave your phone behind, or even what I recommend even more is to bring the phone with you and start the checklist, and then just put it in your bag and forget about it. Because that way it'll still record your track and your time and everything, and then you can enter in the bird observations at a later time.
Right, I'm saying like, 'cause there's a lot of information and a lot of choices you have
Yep.
using the app. Is there any kind of printable handwritten checklist you could do to make those, that help guide you through those observations by hand rather than the app?
Yeah.
You just kind of have to make your own from what the app offers.
So yeah, we do have this sheet that it just lists all the species we would expect you to find probably in North Carolina, and then it has some kind of frequently asked questions. It has like the reminders about the checklist length and some other, a legend of some other things to hopefully help guide you. But then, yeah, once you fill that out, we would need to get that into our data portal. Yeah. Okay.
I'm just like, in terms of where would you find this?
So I don't think we've quite released it or put it on the website yet. So in our handbook, it said like it was supposed to be an appendix in our handbook, which is online, but it's like coming soon, and
You don't have one yet.
we don't. No. Yeah.
The Carolina Bird Club has a checklist.
Mm.
I think you can still purchase them for a very nominal price, and that might get you started on a paper checklist. Whoever was asking that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The sheet you handed out, which you didn't have enough of with the code, if it's okay with Maddie, can we, we got a copy machine, can we run 10 for the people who didn't get them? Because I'd like to have that sheet.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Is that okay, Maddie?
We've got a couple up here. And I could share a PDF.
Raise your hand if you need one.
Are you gonna print some? That's a different one.
No, this is not the right one.
That's the one he has.
No, this one has the right one.
So for people who, birding is use your eyes and to identify things, and a lot of times, even more so, you're using your ears because you can't see the bird. So this is we've got these MP3, these it used to be CDs that I burned of this series called Birding by Ear, and it's kind of a tutorial to take you through that, and another one called this Bird Ear Training Guide. If anybody wants access to these, I can put this screen back up. You can get the QR code here, and I'll take you to Google Drive, and you can just download that. So those can be helpful if that's sort of the direction you're headed into, where you want to start getting more familiar with that. And that these authors do a really good job of sort of taking you through that process. A lot of it's just experience. The more you hear something, the more familiar you get with it, and more confident you get. So the Merlin Bird ID app, we kind of already talked about that. I recommend getting this. I think it's a great place to start learning more about how to identify birds.
And that one's free.
This is free, yes. Yeah. We could maybe demo that. But the point is, don't guess. If you're not 100% certain what the identification is, don't guess. If you can, there are more generic identifications you can go. So you might be like, I know that's a gull. I don't know if it's a laughing gull or a herring gull or a ring-billed gull. You could just say it's a gull, or it's a hawk or a crow, or it's one of those finches. It's a sparrow, warbler. It even gets as generic as a passerine, so it's a perching bird. But there's no code for just I saw a bird. Like you can't get. But if you do see something and you can't, it's so far away, or you just have no idea, if you can't even put it into one of these, then you just have to just leave it off the list. You could put it in there's the comments or notes section. You could say, I saw a flock of 10 birds, half a mile off. I have no idea what they were, and that would probably be the best way to handle that. But so yeah, resist the temptation to guess. And I think lastly, we've got regional coordinators helping with the Atlas. These are our 9 regions. Christina, you've met, is in Region 2. Their contact information is on our website. So if you've got any questions, you can reach out to them or me. I've got, like I said, my business card is here, or I'm also the coordinator for regional coordinator for Region 4. But they're all volunteering their time to do this, so we really appreciate all they've done. These are our partners currently that are serving on committees and helping with other aspects of the Atlas. And that's it. And this is my contact information here, email and phone number. And I live in Wilmington, by the way. Any